Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever actually stopped to wonder what's going on inside your brain when you reach for that second slice of pizza, or when you're trying to decide if that new shirt is really worth the price tag? Every single time we eat, buy, or consume something, we are making these absolutely fascinating subconscious mathematical calculations. Today, we're going to unpack the hidden economic rules that govern human satisfaction. All right, let's dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with the science of satisfaction, move into the law of diminishing returns, talk about balancing utility and price, map out your indifference, and finally, we'll find that perfect sweet spot. So let's jump into section 1, the science of satisfaction. To really ground all this economic theory into everyday human psychology, we've got to start with a fundamental building block, and that is utility. Put simply, utility is just the want-satisfying power of a commodity. It's kind of like this invisible force, right? The capacity that a good or service holds to fulfill a specific human desire. Whether it's a glass of ice-cold water when you're super thirsty or unboxing a brand new smartphone, its utility is what actually draws you to it. But here's the thing. Utility has some pretty quirky features. First off, it's totally subjective. Like, a meat eater gets huge utility from a steak, right? But a vegetarian, zero. It also depends entirely on time and place. An umbrella has massive utility during a rainstorm, but literally none in a snowstorm. But here's the most fascinating part to me. Utility is completely devoid of ethical connotations. A product doesn't actually have to be good for you to have utility. Even something harmful, like a cigarette, holds immense utility for a smoker simply because it satisfies their specific want, completely regardless of the health consequences. Moving right along to section 2, the law of diminishing returns. Okay, so now that we know what utility actually is, how do we measure it? And what happens when we get, well, too much of a good thing? It basically comes down to two deeply connected but fundamentally different concepts. Think of total utility like the whole iceberg. It's the grand cumulative sum of all the satisfaction you've derived from consuming a commodity over time. Marginal utility, on the other hand, is the incremental driver. It's that extra little boost of joy you get from consuming exactly one more unit. To really visualize this, let's imagine eating mangoes. According to the data we're looking at, your first mango gives you a solid 10 utils of satisfaction. Then your total utility climbs steadily as you eat mango number 2, 3, and 4. But watch what happens when you reach mango number 5. The mountain peaks at exactly 22 utils. In economics, this is called the point of satiation. Basically, your total satisfaction is completely maxed out. And this brilliantly illustrates that exact same mango eating experience, but strictly from the perspective of marginal utility, specifically the law of diminishing marginal utility. As you eat more mangoes, that extra burst of joy you get from each new one just plummets. Mango 1 gave you 10 utils of joy, mango 3 gave you 4, and by that fifth mango, or point of satiety, the marginal utility hits exactly 0. You literally get no extra joy from it. And hey, if you force down a sixth mango, you enter the tummy ache zone. Your marginal utility plunges to -3. You're actually worse off than before you ate it. All right, section 3, balancing utility and price. Now, eating free mangoes is one thing, but in the real world, stuff costs money, right? So let's shift gears and look at how we balance this satisfaction with our hard-earned cash. Imagine you're looking at a shirt that costs 600 rupees. When you see that price tag, your brain instantly fires off a subconscious calculation. You're constantly weighing the utility against the 600 rupees you'd have to sacrifice. If you feel the shirt gives you 700 rupees worth of satisfaction, buying it is an absolute no-brainer. Economists actually call these intra-marginal units. These are the purchases where the joy easily outweighs the cost. But you wouldn't just keep buying copies of that exact same shirt forever, would you? Because, thanks to diminishing marginal utility, the second shirt gives you a little less joy, and the third even less. A totally rational consumer reaches perfect balance, what we call equilibrium, exactly when the marginal utility of a good matches its market price. The very moment your marginal utility equals the price, you stop buying. Any units you buy after this point, those are extra marginal units, and they're usually purchased with a lot of hesitation. So, how does this actually work when we're juggling multiple items on a fixed budget? Well, this introduces the law of equimarginal utility. Let's say you have exactly 40 rupees to spend on good X and good Y. To completely maximize your happiness, you have to allocate your money so that the marginal utility of the very last rupee spent on each good is totally equal. If you hit the target combo, which here is 4 units of X and 2 units of Y, you spend your exact budget, your utility to price ratios perfectly match at 7, and you walk away with a massive 320 units of total utility. No other combination is going to give you more bang for your buck.
Which brings us to Section 4, Mapping Your Indifference.
Now, measuring joy in made-up numbers like utils, which is known as the cardinal approach, is great for theory. But let's be real for a second. Can you actually say that a cup of coffee gives you exactly 14.5 utils of happiness? Yeah, probably not. It's way more natural for us to just rank our preferences like, I prefer coffee over tea, or hey, I like them both equally. And this thought process brings us to a major theoretical pivot, the ordinal utility approach. At the very heart of this approach is something called the indifference curve, sometimes referred to as the iso-utility curve. That prefix iso just means equal. So imagine a curve on a graph representing different combinations of, say, food and clothing. Every single point along this specific curve gives you the exact same level of total satisfaction. Whether you have a ton of food and a little clothing, or a ton of clothing and just a little food, if it's on that same line, you honestly don't care which combination you get. You are entirely indifferent. And these curves, they follow some pretty strict rules. First, they always slope downward, simply because to get more of one good, you have to sacrifice some of the other. Second, they're convex to the origin. This represents your diminishing marginal rate of substitution, which is just a fancy way of saying the more food you get, the less clothing you're willing to give up to get even more food. Finally, higher curves always represent higher total satisfaction, and mathematically speaking, two indifference curves can never ever intersect. And finally, Section 5, Finding the Sweet Spot. We've mapped out our endless desires using these indifference curves, but let's face it, we live in a world of limited resources. So it's time for the grand finale. Before we can reach equilibrium, we have to draw a harsh reality boundary. We call this the budget line. This straight, downward-sloping line represents exactly what you can afford in the real world. If you have a strict budget of 200 rupees, this line shows every single combination you can possibly buy. Anything inside the line, you're leaving money on the table. Anything outside the line, well, that's a luxury dream you just don't have the cash for. So, how does all this build up to our ultimate conclusion? The real magic happens when we combine the two. That straight line is our budget wallet wall. The curved lines, those represent our scale of desire. Points outside the budget line are completely unattainable. Points safely inside are affordable, sure, but they sit on a lower indifference curve, meaning we aren't truly maximizing our joy. The absolute sweet spot happens right at point T. We call this the tangency point. It's literally where the slope of your wallet perfectly kisses the highest possible indifference curve, the slope of your heart. Right there at point T, consumer equilibrium is perfectly achieved. And that brings us to the end of this explainer. It's wild to think about, but we make these complex tangency point calculations every single day without even realizing it. We weigh our diminishing returns, we map our indifferences, and we bump up against the strict boundaries of our budget lines. So I'll leave you with this one thought. The very next time you are standing in a store, weighing a snack against a new shirt, ask yourself, where exactly is your personal tangency point? Thanks so much for learning with me today.